Terry last year talked about the mega warehouses really driving the state of real estate in St. Louis. And that is absolutely the case, because as all of you have seen, no one disagrees with Terry Steve. But what we also have seen is that product is becoming speculative and those buildings are getting bigger. Now quickly I'll touch on St. Louis in 2007, but primarily I want to talk about how we compare to the other Midwest markets. Now there was some real uneasiness in 2007 about how St. Louis was going to perform. And actually we've done very, very well. Our overall vacancy rate is less than 6%, and we absorbed just under 1.8 million square feet. And that compares to 2.6 million square feet in 2005 and another 1.6 million in 2006. Two things are really driving this uneasiness. One, the uncertainty of the economy we're all well aware of. Two is the availability of large blocks of space have really grabbed the headlines. And we see our overall vacancy in the white. In the red shows our modern bulk vacancy, almost 18%. But we really don't see this as a huge issue. These comprise of very large blocks of space, and quite frankly, we're one or two deals away from that coming right back down where we want it. We've seen a real trend in product going from, let me back up. Indianapolis and Memphis and Chicago also are right in that range for modern bulk vacancy. So we're right there with the other regional markets. Now, going forward, we see speculative product being more the case. If you look in St. Louis, from 2000 to 2003, less than 50% of all of our large modern bulk buildings were built on a speculative basis. From 2004 to 2006, that jumped to almost 90%, and last year, 100% of all of our modern bulk buildings were built spec. How does that compare? Chicago, the distribution leader in the Midwest. Once again, less than 50% of them were built spec in 2000 to 2003. Jumped slightly in 2004 to 2006 to 56%. But last year, 83% of all modern bulk buildings in Chicago were built on a spec basis. That is over 15 million square feet, empty buildings with no tenants built in 1 year. Indianapolis and Memphis, we see the exact same trend. Memphis last year, 100% of their buildings were built spec, and Indianapolis was 75%. Not only are these buildings built spec, but they're going to get larger. In Chicago, there were 3 buildings over 1 million square feet that were built. Now, I understand what you're thinking. I know the same thing. We are not Chicago. They are over 1 billion square foot market, 4 times the size of St. Louis. But what better place to look for trends that are happening? If it's happening in Chicago today, I promise you, it's going to be happening here tomorrow. If you don't buy that, let's look at some markets more of our size. Indianapolis is a total inventory of 225 million square feet. St. Louis is 250. Last year, Indianapolis built a 947,000 square foot spec building. Memphis is a market of only 160 million square feet. Last year, 885,000 square foot spec building. For us to continue to retain and attract these large Midwest distribution users, we're going to have to build it spec, and we're going to have to build them bigger. So what's happening in corporate America that's driving this trend? 3 main things, consolidation being one of them. Very simply, the big are getting bigger. Federated buys May, $10 billion. Whirlpool buys Maytag, almost a $2 billion acquisition. And Ingersoll Rand, just last year, bought Trane, another $10 billion acquisition. Let's go back 1 second there. In the consolidation, what we need to look for is not only are these companies getting larger, but their buildings are going to get larger, but most importantly, their supply chains are getting larger. And the larger they get, the more complex they get. So these companies are having a heck of a time trying to figure out what's the most efficient supply chain to have. And when they do, it's too late. They don't have time to build. They're going to be looking for a product that's available now. Another thing they're looking for is redundancy in their supply chain. We're very well aware of what's happening in the LA ports and the overcapacity there. So we will see alternative ports, Canada, Mexico, and also in the Northeast that was opened up through the improvements in the Suez Canal. They're also looking for multimodal options. If they can't ship it here by truck, they're going to find it or they're going to ship it here by train. These companies cannot afford to have any disruption in their supply chain costs. It is just too expensive for them. And lastly, this is a slide that Terry used last year that shows it very well, flexibility. Companies are looking, they don't know what they want all the time, so they're going to look for shorter terms, and they're going to look for flexible space. And no better way to do that than with the 3PLs or the third-party logistics operators. Look for them to continue to be a big part of this modern bulk era. So what does all this mean for St. Louis? Well, we've put together a very simple cost analysis slide to show what happens within these supply chains. And first, your transportation and logistics costs are double what it is for labor. Labor is 5 to 10 times the cost of the real estate and the facilities. And transportation, which transportation means there's 10 to 15 times the cost of the real estate and the facilities. Now, everybody in this room thinks that these deals are made with the type of building you build, where you build it, how you build it, what's it going to cost, what your lease rate is, who your broker is. But the fact of the matter is 90% of all of these real estate decisions in the bulk market are made before they even show up at your building. So what's that tell us? Well, it makes me pretty excited about St. Louis. For one, we've got a great central location. Two, we've got a great labor force. In fact, in 2006, the Logistics Today magazine voted St. Louis #1 out of over 350 metro areas, #1 in transportation and warehouse labor. And lastly, they need those intermodal capabilities. St. Louis, great interstate connectivity. We also have a great multimodal market. We are second in rail jobs to Chicago, and we are third in rail lines to Chicago. And lastly, we've got the second largest inland port in the entire country. So the real question is, are we going to build and supply enough speculative product to take advantage of these market trends? Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. That was a great presentation. You passed the test.
Thank you.
Our next presenters are Paul Hilton and Mike Hanrahan presenting the investment sales market. The last 2 years of our programs, Paul and Mike have come up here and told us the great news in the investment sales market. However, of all the presentations we're doing today, the investment sales market is probably the one with the biggest question marks. So, gentlemen, what can we expect in 2008?
Thanks, Steve.